Hi, this is Curious Mystics Podcast. Together we explore the mysteries of the spiritual world, sometimes boldly,
Sometimes cautiously.
but always with open hearts.
And curious minds.
See you soon. Hello, it's Erica,
And Kim.
and this is Curious Mystics Podcast. Woo!
I felt like that needed like a
Right?
woo.
Welcome back, everyone!
An epic intro.
Epic.
Oh man, it's gonna be a day.
It's a for sure.
What's new?
Oh my goodness. I was in Utah last week with my sister, which was nice. I just love Utah. I was looking at apartments. I'm like, I need an apartment out there. Can't afford anything, but let's go.
I know you love every time you go. I have never been, but every time you talk about it, I'm like, wow, this place sounds awesome.
Like you're driving to the grocery store and there's freaking mountains. It's just, I don't know. I can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Epic.
Yeah. Like, how do you ever get over that? Like, I feel like not. So
No, how could you?
you can't. It's crazy. But yeah. And then I did a retreat not retreat. Retreat? No, it's not a retreat. What's it called? Workshop. I did a workshop this weekend on Saturday for Quantum Leap. Which was really cool. That was really powerful. I was super tired during it though, because I had just come back like that night at midnight the night before. But yeah, it was really cool. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
We'll have to talk more about that.
Yeah. How about you?
Nothing's new. We have like a month before the holidays, before Thanksgiving and everything, but I'm going to Florida for Thanksgiving and I just keep thinking about travel and like how much I don't want to do it right now.
Are you driving or are you flying?
We're flying.
Right. You've driven to Florida before, right?
Too many times. I will
gosh.
not ever do that again.
Like I remember living in Ohio, hearing people driving to Florida, and I thought that was insane. And people drive from freaking Connecticut. I think that's insane.
One of my issues with it is that we don't stop. So there is no, hey, let's take a break for a couple hours or let's stop overnight. It's like we're going straight through. So the fastest that we've done it in is 17 hours. The longest that it's taken us has been 22 hours. Neither of those is a fun time. I don't like driving for more than 6 hours. I have driven 12 hours straight myself. Not a fan.
Yeah. I regularly drive 8 to 9 hours to go to my parents' house. So that is kind of normal for me, but even now that's starting to get to be too much. And then my absolute positive max is 12 hours. I've done 14 and a half, never, ever again.
Yeah.
Never again. I can't.
Yeah, it's just not a fun time. And like with no matter what I start out with, I'm like, all right, we're going to have the snacks. We're going to have the vibes. We're going to have music and movies and games and, topics to discuss and quiet time to have. And I can plan it all. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If I get to that like 12-hour mark, I'm like, I don't want to look at any single person in this car. And if I'm by myself, I don't want to be by myself. Like, it always gets to that point. So we're not driving, we're flying, but we are flying a Velo, and we're flying from Tweed, which is in New Haven, to Jacksonville. And they only do like one flight every 3 days. So if a flight gets delayed or canceled, that's it. We aren't going to have another flight. So
you're out of luck. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, fingers double crossed on that one.
So that is like, that's the stress that I'm not looking forward to. but
Well,
we'll see how it goes.
have positive thoughts. It will be
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Yes. And try to get through some of my frustrations that naturally build. But anyway,
Yeah, well, that'll be exciting though.
so today we're going to get into some shadow work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Out of curiosity, what's your understanding of shadow work and how did that come to be?
So my kind of baseline understanding is that it is what you have to work on. It's kind of like, I think I initially thought it was kind of like paradigms and limiting beliefs and things that you kind of just, you know about yourself or maybe you don't know about yourself and they need some work. That's kind of what I understood shadow work to be, where that came from. I think just from kind of hearing about it and but not really like listening to the process or diving into it more.
Was that something that you were exposed to like once you got into the spirituality journey?
Good question. I feel like I probably heard it here and there,
Mm-hmm.
like on social media or in a book or, something at some point, but I don't think I was like really heard about it until we got into this work where I heard about it a lot more.
Okay. I'm interested to know like how people hear about it because I first heard about it in school.
Mm,
Um, when I was going to school in undergrad for psychology, I
that
heard
makes
about it
sense.
because of Carl Jung, who was a psychiatrist and therapist, and he kind of presented the idea of shadow work in all of his life's work, and he was a very big contributor to the field of psychology. So to then see it kind of transcend just the mental health field and then come into spirituality and realize that, oh, this is something that is a big deal and is discussed and approached from so many different perspectives. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that you would need to know about this in psychology in the mental health field because it's essentially what's going on with you when you have mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
It can't,
mean?
yeah, it can definitely be playing a role there. The way that we learned about it was really about how to best integrate all parts of yourself to make the most well-rounded person to
Mhm.
grow as much as you possibly can. And you can't do that without acknowledging and accepting the parts of yourself that you don't want to look at.
Right. So that I do know now, the more integration piece. But
Yeah.
when I first heard it, it was more like banishing these type of
Hmm.
things that you don't want, or like killing your shadow, or
Yeah.
killing your ego.
Yeah.
And when I was looking this up, it was like, no, that's you don't really want to kill it because that means like it can lead to kind of like almost like spiritual bypassing, meaning like you don't have these parts of you and
Mhm.
you have these parts of you. And so
Yeah.
you need to learn to like look at it, live with it,
Hmm.
and use it, so to speak, like reintegrate.
Hey friends, we just wanted to take a moment to remind you all that you can interact with us on social media. We can be found at Curious Mystics Podcast on all platforms.
And if you haven't already, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share so that we can keep showing up for you guys with new weekly episodes and content. Thank you for hanging out with us so far and
Stay
stay
curious.
curious.
Yeah. Yeah. So like trying to just overcome it and remove it, I mean on multiple ends can be like an invalidation. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
invalidating yourself, then you're not really um like living to your most potential, your
Mm-hmm.
highest potential, or
Mm-hmm.
really accepting all of the things that make you you.
Right, exactly.
So my biggest the way that I look at it now, the biggest like takeaway from all of this for me is like being able to shine a light on the shadows, being able to highlight them, expose them, confront them in order to integrate them, in order to accept them in some way. And my idea of acceptance isn't always the same as everybody else's. Again, that comes from like the mental health piece of things. I always look at acceptance from like a radical acceptance standpoint, which is a DBT thing. But radical acceptance is calling it out and understanding that it's there so that you can do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
So accepting your shadows for me isn't necessarily saying, oh, I love this about myself and I'm going to do it more. But it's like, hey, this is a part of me and how does it play a role and how can I use it? Or is there something that I need to do about it in order to heal it in some way?
Well, I think that goes back to especially your philosophy is that there's no good or bad
Yeah.
feelings, that they just are.
Yeah.
And when I was looking at this stuff, looking at like shadow work and kind of doing some of the research for this episode, one, I gotta say, I was uncomfortable when I
Mm-hmm.
started. I'm like, this is making me very uncomfortable, and I don't want to continue reading because that means I have to do something about it, which I guess is inherently what we got to do,
Yeah.
inherently what this is all about. But what I was reading is, it was kind of like, it depends on who you're reading. Is that some people were like, it's your evil parts. It's all
Mm-hmm.
your bad, quote unquote, parts,
Mm-hmm.
as far as like your feelings and the parts of you. Do you think shadow work is is shadow inherently evil? Or do you think it's our own perception of evil, so therefore we hide it? And I guess evil, like I'm saying good or bad, like bad, maybe not
Yeah.
evil, but bad.
No, I don't think that. Um, I don't like that. I don't like that.
Mhm.
I don't think that because I think that our shadows and the things that we suppress are things that could potentially serve us in some way, shape, or form. And I have some examples of like what that might look like, but I'm going to take it to an extreme for a second before I go
Mhm.
there. And an extreme for me is when people present those like moral dilemmas, like you have a parent and that parent has no income, no way to feed their family, no way to take care of their sick or dying family members. And so they go and steal,
Mhm.
or they go and not just like steal from a company, but maybe they steal from another family.
Mhm.
And we can look at that and say that's a bad thing. I'm
Right.
saying that in quotes, but under those circumstances, that's what that person needed to do in order to survive. And it wasn't necessarily to intentionally cause harm to somebody else,
Mhm.
right? But when I think about those types of extremes, we don't know. Nobody will ever know what they're going to do in that position unless they're in that position.
Mhm.
And so our shadow is what comes out then that we are trying to ignore and repress because we're trying to be this other person, this other version of ourselves.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I don't necessarily think it's bad, but when or how do we use it or integrate it is my view.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm just thinking of like all the apocalyptic
Yeah.
shows and movies. I mean, it's like, and might go a little off topic, but a little on topic. Um, like in some of all those apocalyptic, there's always like those extremely bad people. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, were those people, did they have that deep down in them to begin with?
Mm.
Or, you know what I mean? Or but now they get to just have it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Or are they the people that are like kind of the heroines in the
Yeah.
show? They're just trying to like survive and protect their family and themselves. So it's not necessarily that they, you know, were bad people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think in those instances too, it's like there can be an argument made for something in that person's body, mind, system, soul, whatever, highlighted that that's how they needed to be for the situation, or even not for the situation. Maybe they were doing things that were quote unquote bad pre-apocalypse, and then the apocalypse happens and it's like, oh, now this is a free-for-all and
Mm-hmm.
I can do whatever I want. But you don't understand what a person is thinking or going through or experiencing unless you are that person. So,
Right, exactly.
and that doesn't mean, I don't know, I don't think that means that it's like okay or right or necessary for a person to be going around doing all of those things in either of those scenarios. But
Mhm.
I don't know. I just try to remove the judgment from it.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the definitions that I saw of what shadow is, and it's called shadow because it hasn't been captured by the light of our consciousness, and because
Mm-hmm.
it has been banned from the surface of our visible life.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that our shadow is essentially our wounded self.
Mm-hmm.
So everything we got hurt by, usually as a child and or like early life,
Right.
um, didn't get fully processed. And so it got repressed into your unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, was a way that we protected ourselves. And now maybe further
Yeah.
protecting ourselves from hurt or not hurt. What's the other word? Abandonment or rejections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree with that. And I think there's a lot of things that we develop at certain points in our lives, sometimes in childhood, sometimes in our young adult years, sometimes later in life. But we develop these beliefs or thought processes or behaviors that serve us in a moment. And so we hold on to, and they don't always serve us, and we don't always need to hold on to them. And that's where, like, some of the more, if we're pulling away from the extremes of what we were just talking about, some of the more common ways that I see, at least in my work, that I see this happen is like with vulnerability. A person might correlate being vulnerable with being weak. And so they don't allow themselves to be vulnerable, which might lead them to suppressing emotions, suppressing experiences, harshly judging other people for being vulnerable. But ultimately, what that can do is lead that person to not acknowledge the power in being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
It hardens them to connection, to experiences, to
Absolutely.
processing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they are isolating and they aren't developing like genuine connections and they are struggling to manage certain situations because they won't allow themselves to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, being vulnerable can be a power. It's something that they can choose. It's something that they can step into. It's something that can help them process or experience.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just like one
Mm-hmm.
way that I see it pretty regularly.
I definitely had to go through that when I got diagnosed with MS.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, when I first got diagnosed, oh my gosh. I was like, no, I'm the strong one. You know what I mean? I'm the one
Mm-hmm.
that fixes everybody's problems. I can't have problems, and I didn't want anybody else to know I had problems and or deal with my problems. So
Yeah.
definitely. And I still work on that one for sure, but that one was big at that time.
Yeah. Um, so when I thought about that specific example, I also thought of a couple more. All of these examples I put out there because I've experienced them personally.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want anyone to feel like they're being called out.
Mm-hmm.
But these are things that you might see more commonly. So, and I just wanted to highlight that because you mentioned like the MS thing, and I know that I've felt, my own issues with vulnerability over time too. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's something that maybe a lot of people could connect with. But um, this one, specifically for you, Erica,
I was
because
gonna say, Debbie, you're calling me out. What's up?
you and I have talked about this. A person who believes that they can only be accepted in their masculine
Mm-hmm.
may then shun their feminine. And I'm not saying shun as in like push it away, but like I don't have room for this.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I have talked about this because both of us have kind of lived in that realm for so long where it's like, no, we have to do. And so we
Mm-hmm.
don't have time to be.
Right.
And that can be another form of like the shadow. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, we don't give space to the feminine. So,
Absolutely. No,
you know.
it's interesting that you just brought that up because that's something I've been working on for the last
Mm-hmm.
year.
Mm-hmm.
And done pretty well, I think. But most recently, I said to my therapist, like, I miss my boss bitch personality. I miss my boss babe. And I was like, I
Yeah.
miss that. I used to be very aggressive and like, I was like, man, I kind of miss that. But I'm like,
Yeah.
why? Do you miss being aggressive and like a go-getter? Like, I don't know.
It is my first instinct, and I find myself often, like even in the past like week or two, like very often having this come up, where the first thought that I have is that track, and it's
Mhm.
like, no, I'm just gonna say, I'm just gonna do, I'm just gonna whatever, and I have to stop myself. So I don't, I wouldn't say that I necessarily miss it, but it does come up immediately now. And I'm just like pushing that piece down. I'm trying to find the balance
The
between the two.
balance, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like
Yeah.
I can still be a boss babe without, you
Yeah.
know, the heels and the suits and the aggression.
Yeah. 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 I mean, for me, I think it's like about owning that and being that without having to sacrifice relationships or connection.
Mhm, mhm,
That's where it comes up the most for me is like, oh, the first thing that I think is to say something that's going to hurt your feelings and that's going to ruin our
mhm,
connection. And I don't want to be in that space. So let me be a little bit more nurturing. Let me be a little bit more compassionate. Let me be a little bit more thoughtful,
mhm.
um, and lean into that side. But, um, and then this other one that I was thinking of is like, this is me being vulnerable. So I'm just going to throw it out there and we're not going to talk about it.
We got you.
Uh, but if a person is learning or taught that their value only comes if they contribute from a private perspective. So if I contribute one-on-one, then someone can see my value versus being in a group. And I think about this in like a family unit, but in any group setting. I can't speak up in family settings, in group settings, because I don't have value in that setting. But if I have
Mm,
conversations one on one, then people can see my value and pull me into the conversation. So that, um, really what that has led to is being a person who doesn't feel like there's a strong sense of community, being a person who pulls back intentionally, being a person who may limit my opportunity for connection and getting in my own way because of that,
mhm.
because there's this belief that value only comes one on one.
Hmm. Yeah,
So, yeah,
a lot of layers there.
yeah.
When I just came to mind human design.
Mm,
That just popped into my head. But
yeah,
yeah, which is hard to break out of
yeah, yeah. That
until
one,
you one acknowledge that and two then start putting yourself into other situations,
yes.
which is scary and hard.
Right. Right. So I think from this sense, like if we're talking about the shadow, recognizing that it can be complex, that it's not
Mhm.
as simple and straightforward as, you know, being in a life or death situation and
Oh
doing
yeah.
something that you might think is abhorrent or that you might think is um evil or bad. It can also be these very complicated, like day-to-day scenarios that
Yeah, I'm thinking of this made me start thinking of this. I've thought about this before, but that I was taught how to, in order to be heard or stick up for yourself, you had to argue,
mm,
argumentative,
hmm
and at times aggressively argumentative.
hmm
And so in my first major relationship, if I was triggered at all, it would turn into it would escalate
yeah,
because then that person would escalate, then I would escalate because, you know what I mean? Like just got out of
yeah,
hand. And it's something that I had to learn that no, you just because that person had a bad day and snapped at you, you do not need to rise to the occasion. And that's something I had to work on big time
hmm
and notice, and that I don't do in my current relationship
hmm
very with very much intention.
hmm
So it's
it
just
takes a lot
something.
of work sometimes to like recognize those things, to process them, to call them out, to do something about them. But I think that's like the big picture. I mean, from a spiritual perspective, the idea is that the more that you can identify these things, the more insight and awareness you have, the more that you can grow in your spiritual journey. Um, and that does need to be done over time. It does need to happen sometimes slowly and sometimes repeatedly. Like I can
Mhm.
have this experience and recognize that this whatever thing might be a shadow that I need to work on, but I only recognize it in this context. And so then a different situation happens and now I'm like revisiting that and like, oh yeah, that is something that I'm continuously putting effort into.
So, how do you, because when I first started thinking about it, I'm like, this sounds like paradigms, but how do you feel this is different? Like, I know that they're different, but like,
Mm,
because paradigms are very similar, they're formed in a similar way,
mm-hmm.
from like wounds or what you're taught as protection as a kid and or
Yeah.
any parts of your life. So, so I kind of said, okay, is paradigms kind of the first layer of shadow work or first layer of self work, I guess, and then shadow work is a deeper layer, or are they different or
I
equal?
mean, I think that they could probably be on a very similar level, um, and kind of being like parallel to each other. I, I think sometimes though that, and this isn't with every single, like there, you can do shadow work and pull things out. And some of it's going to be more deep rooted than others. So it's not like everything needs to go super, super deep, but some of it is going to go
Mm-hmm.
super deep.
Mm-hmm.
So, and especially, and I think this is where like it can get really hard sometimes is when it's like ancestral or generational.
Mm-hmm.
And it's stuff that is so deep rooted that it wasn't you that experienced it. It was that your
Mm-hmm.
lineage experienced it or that your, the previous generation experienced it or something like that. And it becomes more challenging to incorporate it because it's not a regular occurrence in your day-to-day life.
Yeah, and I think for me, from doing all this work over the last year on myself, is that each time I take like work on something and think I have that down, something deeper comes up,
Mm-hmm.
and then something deeper comes up, and
Mm-hmm.
then so, what I mean? It's like another layer, and not to say that I have like all this bad stuff in me, but it's just like once something else is removed, then I feel like then
Yeah.
you're able to see everything else. And it's important to do this work. I don't know, maybe we'll get to that. I was going to talk about, I don't know if you have examples of like how it comes, like from trauma, or we already
Mm.
kind of talked about that.
I mean, I don't have any like specific examples ready to go, but that's something that we could
Mhm.
talk about. Did you have some ideas?
Yeah. So I think I when I was looking it up, there was like it can come from trauma, it can come from karma, it can come from like you said,
Mm-hmm.
generational
Mm-hmm.
trauma, generational um issues. It could come from society.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of basically anything that you stuffed down,
Yeah.
I guess. And it doesn't even need to make sense to anybody else, but
Mm-hmm.
you stuffed it down for a reason because you thought it was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And you hid it away because you thought it was a problem because of some sort of outside influence that made you think that or
Yeah.
made you perceive that even. It may not even be something that really should have made you feel that way, but you perceived it that way.
Yeah. And I think that's a big piece of this too, is like it, I talk about this often with people in regards to things that we form as children. But even into our adulthood, not every lesson that we learn is explicit.
Mhm.
Most of what we learn is covert. It's something that is, we see this pattern happening. We recognize that interaction. We witness something or we are told something by society, right? We're
Mhm.
getting this message and receiving it and then interpreting it. What does that mean for us?
Mhm.
So to have those messages be given to us and for us to then absorb it as though it's ours that's one of the hard pieces, I think, of, at least in my experience, one of the hard pieces that I've had to deal with doing shadow work is like, is this mine or is
Mm-hmm.
this somebody else's? And I've internalized it in some way.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, absolutely. Um, and shadow can take over and control your life
Mm-hmm.
if you don't deal with it, and it
Mm-hmm.
keeps presenting itself for you to do in uncomfortable situations so that it brings it up so then you can address it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I they had an instance that happened many, many, many years ago that they never dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
And that has played through the rest of their life. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, so that happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and this, and now
Yeah.
they're 60 layers deep.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you got to, unfortunately, you're going to have to start with the bottom because everything else is just on top because of that,
Mm-hmm.
So, which is going to be hard, but
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
have, sometimes you have to recognize that maybe there was something
Mm-hmm.
that really big that needs to happen so that you can then peel off the rest of the smaller layers, or vice versa. But I don't know. I
Yeah.
think it depends on the person, but
Yeah. I mean, do you recognize what that thing is to go that deep, or do you need to like, start at the top and slowly take off each layer and discover it as you go? But
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's complicated and messy and uncomfortable and like not always something that you would have the energy for, but something
yeah,
that can be rewarding
yeah.
getting to the end of it.
Rewarding, releasing,
Mm-hmm.
empowering.
Absolutely.
One of the things I read that was interesting was that one of the ways that you can find out what is shadow for you
Mm-hmm.
is what you project onto other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that is so true.
Mm-hmm.
So true. Um,
This
yeah.
requires you to be very mindful because you don't always know what you're projecting. There are so many times where I um, can talk to someone and they can tell me about an interaction that they've had or a thought that they've had or whatever. And I'll be like, that sounds like a projection. That
Mm-hmm.
sounds like you're projecting. That sounds like someone else is projecting. And they're like, oh, crap. Yeah, that's what's happening here. Like we do it without even realizing. So being really like mindful and aware of ourselves in any given moment. I was going to say that like um questioning yourself, checking in with yourself every once in a while and just recognizing, is this something that is bringing up uh, an experience, whether it's an encounter that I'm having with another person or an encounter that I'm having by myself. Am I leaving this encounter feeling something that is unaligned in some way? Feeling frustrated, unfulfilled, angry, resentful, relieved, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that situation's over. Well, why was I so relieved that it was over? What about it was stressful for me or unwanted? And just kind of like checking in with yourself regularly about those
Yeah.
things.
Being mindful of when you have a knee-jerk reaction to somebody doing something or saying something.
Mm-hmm.
Why was that so like, you know,
Yeah.
why was that, was it warranted in that situation? Was it not? Was it,
Yeah.
something that, like, I don't like the word triggering because everybody talks about it now, but it,
Mm-hmm.
it is appropriate in this situation. Like, if something triggered you to have some sort of, we'll say negative for the lack of anything else, reaction,
Mm-hmm.
then kind of analyzing that, especially if it's kind of like out of proportion to the situation, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great place to start, just recognizing those reactions and also knowing that, not, again, coming back to like some things are deep and some things aren't. And it's
Mhm.
like, okay, that's something that I can address a little bit more easily versus because I don't remember who I was having this conversation with, but we were talking about like pet peeves.
Mm.
And I'm like, I have a couple pet peeves. And when it happens, it kind of is uh, like a poke, right? Somebody
Mhm.
that's like really poking me and like that's annoying.
Mhm.
But it's not something that I'm like, oh my God, that's awful. That's terrible. I can't believe this person is doing this. Like, it's not like life changing. But are those worth, being reflective of? Are those worth thinking about? And in some
Mhm.
cases, they just give me some more insight and information about myself. And other times it's like, oh, this is actually not mine, or this is actually a bigger deal, or this is actually
Mhm.
stems from XYZ. And, then you can take it from there. Not everything is going to be, a shadow that needs to be confronted, but just being
Yeah.
aware of it.
I was just thinking about that because, like, okay, we could also then become the opposite and over analyzing of ourselves. Like, okay, I got
Yes.
angry today. Oh, there must be something wrong with me. No, no, it's just maybe you're tired today, or that was really warranted. That person was,
Yeah.
that situation was something you should be angry about. It doesn't mean that you should never have some of these like emotions.
Yes.
But if there's patterns to these emotions,
Mm-hmm.
that's when that might be something to look at.
Yeah. Yeah. Knowing, if it's appropriate or not for the situation. And again, sometimes people don't know. So you start further back. How much awareness can I have of myself? Sometimes people overreact or underreact to a situation, and don't realize that it's an overreaction or underreaction. And just being like open to, um, maybe to some feedback about that, or being open to looking at it from a different perspective
Mhm, mhm.
can be helpful.
Yeah. So some of the things that could be, I have a list of some of the things that could be um, things that you need to work on in shadow: jealousy,
Mm-hmm.
addiction,
Mm-hmm.
depression and anxiety, codependency, creating or being part of a lot of drama in your life, self-sabotage,
Mm-hmm.
power struggles,
Mm-hmm.
lies,
Yeah.
procrastination, resentment, passive aggressiveness,
Mm-hmm.
bitterness, aggression, anger, and rage, violent behaviors and abuse,
Mm-hmm.
victimization, guilt and shame, reactive, and discontentment.
Yeah. That's a pretty good list.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a good thing for people to take and like come back to and say, oh, is this something that I struggle with? Is this something that impacts me? Is this something that continuously shows up in my life in certain ways? Is there a pattern around this?
Yeah.
And that could be a good place for people to start.
And in most of these, you're going to have these at
Mm-hmm.
some point, but like you said, like we were talking about, it's a pattern.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a natural experience of having a wide range of emotions throughout your life because of different situations, but is it something that is significant? Is it something that is coming up again and again in that pattern style, or that's hindering you in some way? I think about, actually, this just came to mind for me. I know someone who was, I'm trying to think of a way to put this without giving too much information, who experienced a pattern with work
Mm.
um, in every job they had. Every single job they had, this thing happened. And not once ever did this person stop and think,
Mm-hmm.
why does this keep happening to me?
Mm-hmm.
And instead continuously blamed other circumstances. And it just, for everyone else around them, it was like, hello, the lights are there, the sign is on, like, can you
Right.
see it?
Mm-hmm.
But they just refused to see the pattern there. And it's like, okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
that's their journey. Um, we can only do so much and try to point it out, but if they don't want to hear it, they don't want to hear it. But it's those types of things where it's like, yeah, sometimes we have like major patterns happening that we are completely oblivious to
Mm-hmm.
because they've happened so much that it's like, that's the norm.
Yep.
and we don't think anything of it. And it's like, yeah, sometimes you need to look at those, examine, consider, assess if
Mhm.
that's, natural for the situation.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think that goes back to creating the drama
Yeah.
or being part of a drama in your life.
Yeah.
Um, I had a sudden thought while I was reading about this about, I'm gonna be really vulnerable here for a second, but when my daughter moved in with us,
Mm-hmm.
when she first moved in, she's listening, I'm sorry. Uh, she would clean the house, she would make dinner. The house was it was just like, it was very homemaker. It was very, I mean, everything was nice and pretty, and we had dinner, and we had the table was set, and the dishes clean, and the house clean, and there was no clutter, and da 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 da. And I was so upset about it.
Mm.
I was so upset about it. And I realized it's because I was jealous and felt bad that that's not the life I was giving my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that that was a life that she needed, and I didn't give it to them
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't Susie Homemaker. I wasn't good at doing that sort of stuff, quote unquote. So that brought out all kind of emotions. And I remember talking to my husband about it, and he's like, yeah, but she doesn't have a job, and she doesn't, you know what I mean? Her job was very fluid at the time, and it's like she doesn't have kids. He's like, it's okay. He's like, it's
Mm-hmm.
okay. And I was like, wow, that just brought up some stuff for me. And I should have been just appreciative that she was doing that, but I took it and just was
Yeah.
upset by it. So,
I think that's a really good example, though, of how you could experience something, I could experience something. Like, we can have an experience that is truly our own versus it had nothing to do with her.
no.
She's in a different place in her life. She was doing what she was doing. It had nothing to do with her, and it had everything to do with how you were feeling in that moment, and being able to have the space to process that and to
Mhm,
figure out oh, wait a minute, what does this mean for me? That's the type of insight that we all need to pause and think about
mhm,
and be able to see for ourselves so that we can address those things.
mhm. Yep. Yeah, I was like, wow. Okay.
Mhm.
I need to
Yeah.
step back a moment here. Why am I so upset by this? Why am I so sad about this happening? But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know how you feel about it now, but at at the time when they first moved in, you were in a totally different space than you are now, and
Mhm,
having had the chance to work on some
mhm.
of the other areas in your life, maybe you feel differently about it now. I don't know, but
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yes. Now it's I've worked through a lot of that, but yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
It definitely brought something up. So,
How do you think are some of the easiest ways for a person okay, now I see this is the shadow that I need to work on. I recognize I have the insight. How do you think are some of the easiest ways to do the work?
good question. And I have a similar question.
Okay.
So I have ideas on how to work on it, but okay, I'll answer your question first. Um, journaling.
Hmm.
Journaling on when you have an experience that you're like, okay, let me take a moment. Like we said, that trigger, that knee jerk. When you kind of come out of the situation, and maybe just jotting down, hey, I felt this way. Let me think
Hmm.
on it for a little bit. Was that what kind of reaction was that? Why did I have that reaction? So journaling on it,
Hmm.
meditating on it,
Hmm.
um, asking your helping spirits if that's something that you do, your allies, your source, if that's something that you do, asking them to maybe give you some insight on it. Um, those type of things. Therapy. Uh, therapy.
Yeah.
Uh, so that would be kind of how I would start.
Yeah.
What about you?
I agree with those. I mean, we talk about the journaling and the meditation all the time. Journaling, you can find prompts, specific prompts for shadow work, or you can do the free flow type thing, hey, this is the experience that I'm having, and, kind of working through it that way. Um, Therapy, yes, and finding the right type of therapy.
Mhm.
Sometimes what we experience is a very visceral experience. And so that needs to be processed in a different way than,
Mhm.
or doesn't need to be, but might benefit from being processed in a different way than traditional like talk therapy.
Mhm.
Um, so figuring that piece out. I also thought about like the actual act of doing something about it. So if it's a physical experience, then how are you physically changing it? Recognizing the patterns around it, and do I need to change up my physical environment? Do I need to change up my interactions and relationships? Do I need to change
Mhm.
the verbiage that I'm using when I'm talking to someone?
Mhm.
Is it an emotional experience and I need to work on that maybe through affirmations or through, creating certain rituals to release or
Mhm.
embrace this aspect? Those are the other things too, because I think part of what I have started to do recently with a shadow that I am trying to work on is incorporate it into my morning ritual. I'm
Mm.
like, okay, so I have this ritual already existing, and now I'm incorporating a specific piece to address this and trying to like use it as a way to embrace the thing
Mhm.
um instead of avoiding it or addressing it in a way of like journaling. I could journal about it all day. I
Mhm.
think,
Doesn't mean it's gonna do anything about it. Yeah.
yeah. I think I'm beyond that step with this thing in particular, and I benefit more from incorporating it in that way. So, yeah, I would add for the journaling, the mindfulness or the meditation and the therapy, I would add maybe like the physical acts or the rituals or affirmations, the way that you're making decisions
Mhm.
to try and work around it or work with it.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the work that I've done has been with rituals, and it's been with like affirmations. It's been with after doing the journaling and the mindfulness and the like recognizing it is then
Yeah.
to I mean, I do the fire ceremonies. I've mostly done that with limiting beliefs, but it's getting deeper.
Mhm.
Um so let me back up. So part of what I've read is like, okay, you need to incorporate this.
Mhm.
But I feel some of it you have to release. Are we releasing the emotion around it, or are we releasing the thought? What are we releasing? Like for me, I'm trying to think of what it does mean to me. I think it depends on what I'm working with.
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm thinking this in like real time.
Yeah.
um, so like the fire ceremonies that I mostly do, or like the water ceremonies, or the release
Mhm.
of something that is like causing me to not be able to move forward and or limiting me and or like in shadow. The reincorporation piece, I guess, does happen. I guess I'm not like being very like mindful of that situation or like calling it that, I
Mhm.
guess,
Mhm.
because after you do the release, you have to of the emotion and the thoughts, then you have to kind of integrate that new piece to you. Do
Mhm.
you see what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to walk through it in my head and I'm not sure I'm saying it correctly.
What what I think you're trying to say, or at least how I'm understanding it, is kind of like removing the ego. I'm I am removing the attachment that I have to this
Mm-hmm.
thing. I thought about an attachment in a way that was uncomfortable or negative for me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I was suppressing it, so I
Mm-hmm.
felt some type of way about it.
Right.
Removing that attachment so that it doesn't have that association anymore, and being able to accept or integrate it in whatever way it needs to be, right? And maybe that's a, hey, you know what? I'm having um this belief or this thought that is not serving me right now, and maybe at some point it did or at some point it could, and I can accept that without having to push it away
Mm-hmm.
actively in this moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I was taking what you were saying. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I was just kind of trying to, I guess my question, and you don't have to tell me what you're working on, but would you mind sharing like the some like part of the ritual or like what you're integrate, like what you're trying to do with it. So like, I don't know, just kind of curious.
Yeah. Um, um, so I don't really want to talk about what I'm working on, but
Yeah, you
I
don't have to.
will say that it's very uncomfortable for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I have tried to do is like, especially the first, um, the first part of my morning ritual is when I make my coffee and I sprinkle my cinnamon and I'm like setting my intention for the day and asking for whatever it is that I'm asking for. The second part of my ritual is incorporating like that connection to ancestors. I'll light a candle, I'll say a prayer, I'll have a
Mm-hmm.
conversation. So in those two specific things, I am now leaving space for the thing that I'm working on.
Okay.
And sometimes that is me setting an intention. Sometimes it is me acknowledging something very uncomfortable out loud. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it is me asking for um support or guidance from my ancestors. Sometimes it is um, me deciding, okay, today is the day that I am going to do something different,
Mm-hmm.
and let me plan that out so that I can be very purposeful with it. So it might look different every day, but it is
Yeah.
always there.
Yeah, I like that. I think even the first step where you're saying that you're even acknowledging
Mhm.
that there's this uncomfortable piece and then setting an intention that you're looking at whatever that is and then having the conversation. I love all of that, having the conversation out loud with your ancestor about it. It just puts it out there that this is something that I need to work on. And
Yeah.
I think acknowledging, when you talk about being a addict, the first or whatever, the first or forgiveness is to say that there is a problem, that there is
Yeah.
this out there. So
Yeah.
there is
Yeah. And
something
like
that you need to acknowledge.
right. And that some days is easier than others.
Mm-hmm.
And on the days where it is more difficult, where I feel more resistant to it and I don't want to, those days I try to hold a little bit more compassion for myself. And I, s- especially if it's like, because I don't think that there's some sort of like pattern around. It really depends on how I wake up in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
how I'm feeling when I wake up. That will determine what my choice is for the day. Do I feel like I need to do something about this? Do I feel like I'm capable of doing something about this? Or does it need to be a conversation or something else, an affirmation or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
When I make that initial assessment that yes, this is the step that I'm going to take today, if I feel resistant when it comes time to actually take action, um, that's when I'll like hold compassion, hold space, and then say, hey, push for that. But if you don't make it, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is a process. So not every day is going to be perfect. And some days it's a lot easier. And I can be like, yeah, no problem. And other days it's like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. It's like, it feels like it's going against every bone in my body to do this. But yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of different ways to go about how you get rid of it. I think it kind of is probably very individualized.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know I keep saying get rid of it. I don't know how I feel. Like I feel like at times like you need to get rid of the attachment and that
Mm-hmm.
feeling, at least at the ego level.
Yeah.
Because what happens is that the in the thinking brain, when our brain starts to think, our body starts to react. Um and our body doesn't know the difference as to whether it's something that's happening now or happened 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think it's a matter of getting rid of the feeling associated with it and integrating the reason slash that it's okay that you thought this way and that it happened. Ah,
Mm-hmm.
man, I'm struggling with the verbiage. Like I'm thinking it through my head, but like I'm not like expressing it the way I don't know. Again, I'm kind of thinking all this real time, so trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to say it.
Well, I would imagine like if you're thinking about specific scenarios or specific, parts of your shadow, then that might look different because there could be uh, um I'll put it this way. If I am thinking about like jealousy or an emotion like that or an experience like that, that could be very much tied to a specific scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Versus if I'm thinking about like vulnerability,
Mm.
that may not be tied to a specific scenario. It might be just in
In
general, like a
general, right.
personality thing
Mm-hmm.
or a belief thing. So those look different.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, they could also look very similar, but there could be very much differences in them. So that would depend. You know, if it's something that you need to create distance from, maybe the specific attachment to the, you know, to the scenario or to the example or to the situation needs to have distance. Whereas um, the belief or experience is less about getting rid of it, getting rid of the belief versus transforming it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
That makes sense.
yeah.
So that leads me to my question.
Yeah.
Do you think that you can do shadow work alone? In a way that, like, do you need to fully, like, kind of like, especially if it's this like the really deep seated stuff, do you think you can do that without, I don't know, like a coach, a therapist, a spiritual person, a whatever?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I don't know. I I think that some aspects of it might have to be done alone.
Right.
Because typically if we're talking about things that are deep within our shadow, it's stuff that we haven't shared with other people. It's stuff that we might not have even acknowledged ourselves. So accessing it initially might have to be on our own. Um, so I'm going to say that it depends. I think that there is a way of healing and there is a way of doing the shadow work that can incorporate connection, community, guidance. That doesn't necessarily mean somebody has to be all up in your business and know every single step that you're going through
Right.
either.
Right.
I think about the thing that I'm working on right now, and it very much has to do with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I haven't told anybody that that's a
Mm-hmm.
thing. So
Right.
I'm working on it by myself, but I am incorporating other people into it without them knowing. And from a like um guidance perspective, from a, you know, therapist, coach, mentor, um, in any level, they can help to point you in the right direction or to ask you the right questions or to ask questions that maybe you weren't thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
And again, eh, and this is my own personal perspective, and I take this from, you know, just my philosophy in how I approach things in general. I can be there to help guide a person.
Mm-hmm.
I 100% believe that that person has everything that they need internally, whether or not they've accessed it. I
Right.
don't need to know those details.
Mm-hmm.
They just need to be able to access it. So if I can help guide them in that direction, great. I don't have to know at all,
Right.
you know, what it took them to get there, what they thought of, unless they want to share that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I agree with that. I think for me, I also think it kind of like, I'm a very external, like I have to process externally.
hmm
You tend to process internally. So
yeah.
I think it also depends on the person, but like I feel like you said, being able to have someone ask the right questions, because you might not really realize what it
hmm
is that is the shadow, or that you need to that this might even be a shadow. So maybe like
hmm
if you are seeing someone, they can kind of like help you bring that out. I
Yeah.
think the integration piece is good. I think community in general that understands that this type of work is happening, I think is good to have, just to have people hold space and like be there for
hmm
you.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's just a thought.
Yeah. There's probably not like any one right way to do it. Um, so finding the thing that makes the most sense or works the best for you, whatever that is. And maybe for each part of your shadow, that looks different, right? There might be some parts of your shadow that are more dependent on you uh, than it is anybody else, and other parts that might have very much everything to do with somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
I liked this quote by Carl Jung.
yeah.
Um, no tree can grow to heaven without its roots growing to hell.
Mm, that is a good reminder, like um, how much everything is integrated, even when we don't acknowledge it and see it.
Yeah. I don't know. This gave me all kind of thoughts when I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking about this episode. I'm like, oh man, I probably have to work on some stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think it was like a couple weeks ago we were recording, and I don't remember what episode we were doing. Um, and maybe it wasn't during the recording, but it was before we started or something. But something was said, and I was like, oh, let me write this down. And I wrote it down, and I was like, that's a shadow and I don't know why it smacked me in the face, but it smacked me in the face hard. And I was like, oh, that's something I need to work on. Um, and, sometimes in just having these types of conversations, it's like, oh, yeah, that was uncomfortable. Why was that uncomfortable? And
Mhm.
kind of can
Yep.
just highlight where the work needs to be done.
Yeah. Ay, ay,
But it doesn't all have to be, uncomfortable and challenging work. That is part of it. But I think also giving yourself a chance to celebrate the good things, to focus on things that aren't just all hard work or doom and gloom or uncomfortable is just
yeah.
as important.
I think part two is like part of what kind of is like got me into like about this, like kind of a uncomfortable about it is like it's almost like when you're reading about it, all you're hearing is like, oh, almost sounds like everything in your personality is
Mm-hmm.
bad and like you were formed and it was all like trauma and like from your
Yeah.
childhood. And it's like you read that a lot, especially like in social media and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, no, I have some good things about my personality that came out of like my,
Mm-hmm.
experiences and growing upness and,
Yeah.
even my traumas, there's things that are good about me and that don't need to go away.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to remember that, I guess, sometimes whenever, like I said, if social media gets that way, you're reading about the shadow work, you're reading about, oh, I don't know. I hear all the time, like on social media, it's a big thing right now that like your parents basically screwed you up.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but for a millennia,
Mm-hmm.
we've all been screwed up then. Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
But that's so not anything new. I want to
that's what
say
I'm
this.
saying.
It's not anything new. And like, I mean, I was young when I had my son. I was a teenager when I had him. But even then, when I had him, I'm like, well, we all screw up our kids. That's the job of a parent. And I literally believed that at the time is like, yes, your parent as a parent, your job is to protect, to nurture, to love, to help survive, all of those things. But I think to some extent we can't always help it because we can't be 100% perfect. And so
No.
sometimes, hopefully not in any way that's so majorly traumatic or damaging, but sometimes we pass things on or things happen that like wasn't in their best interest or didn't work for them but worked for us. And
Mm-hmm.
we're all figuring it out together. So yes, we might all be, impacted by our parents in some way.
Mm-hmm.
That also doesn't mean that we need, that we all need to shut them out and they deserve to like burn at the stake for it either.
Yeah, no, I mean, oh my gosh, like I love my parents. So it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I hope my kids love me, even though I'm sure I
Hmm.
didn't always handle the situation appropriately, but you
Yeah.
know,
I mean, that's life. That's a part of this human existence is messing up sometimes.
it is.
Like,
Because we can't be perfect. We can't all be perfect for sure.
Yeah.
And what is
So-
perfect? You know,
Exactly.
we get all existential over here.
I know. All right. Well, until next time,
Yeah.
stay
Curious.